There is a stretch of ocean off the coast of Japan that sailors have quietly avoided for generations, long before anyone gave it a name that's stuck in the modern world. Ships have sailed into these waters under clear skies and calm seas, and simply never reached the other side. No wreckage ever surfaced. No distress signal was ever logged. No storm was ever blamed, because there was no storm to blame. It was not just fishing boats and cargo vessels either. Military aircraft have gone dark over this same stretch of water, their last known positions swallowed into silence. And decades later, when modern science finally sent a fully equipped research vessel to investigate the anomalies directly, that ship disappeared too, taking its crew and its findings with it. What you are about to see is not folklore dressed up for a camera. It is a documented pattern of loss that has outlived wooden ships, outlived radar, and outlived every explanation offered so far. By the end of this, you will understand why oceanographers keep returning to these waters despite decades of dead ends, and why the final discovery beneath the surface has left even the most experienced among them without a definitive answer. The waters off Japan's coast carry a name older than modern shipping records, one born from disappearances no captain could ever fully account for. Locals came to call it the Devil's Sea, a designation eventually taken seriously enough that officials marked it as a hazard zone. What lies beneath those waters, and what continues to be detected there, is where this story truly begins. Number 10. The Devil's Sea. For centuries, this stretch of Pacific water carried nothing more than a warning passed between fishermen, a name spoken with more caution than certainty. The Devil's Sea boats that entered it under calm conditions, with experienced crews and clear instructions, simply stopped answering. There was rarely a witness. There was rarely a signal. There was only an empty patch of ocean where a vessel used to be. By the mid-20th century, the losses had become too frequent to dismiss as coincidence or poor seamanship. Japan's government took the unusual step of formally designating the region a hazard zone, not because of weather patterns or known reefs, but because the disappearances themselves demanded some kind of official acknowledgement. It was one of the only times a modern maritime authority admitted without offering a cause. What makes the Devil's Sea unsettling is not just the number of losses, it is the absence of anything left behind to explain them. No consistent debris fields, no Mayday transmissions cut short. If you were adrift out there at dusk, with land no longer visible in any direction, this is the moment the silence would stop feeling peaceful and start feeling deliberate. Sailors accepted the warning and steered around it for generations. Scientists eventually would not. Number 9. The first disappearances, the earliest recorded losses in these waters predate radar, predate radio, predate almost every tool modern sailors rely on to explain what happens to a ship at sea. Fishing crews working close to shore would head out at dawn, following routes their families had used for generations, and simply not return by nightfall. No search ever recovered wreckage. No storm was logged strong enough to account for a total loss. At first, these disappearances were treated the way isolated tragedies often are, as unfortunate but unconnected. A boat lost here, a crew lost there, explained away by currents, by fatigue, by the ordinary risks of working the sea. But over time, the losses clustered in the same stretch of water, repeating with a consistency that was difficult to dismiss as bad luck alone. It was this pattern, not a single dramatic event, that first drew official attention. Investigators began comparing routes, comparing conditions, comparing timelines, searching for one factor that connected the disappearances. What they found did not point to a single cause. It pointed to a region that behaved differently than the water around it, in ways no one could yet measure. That search for an explanation would eventually lead officials to send something far more equipped than a fishing boat into those waters, and what happened to it would only deepen the mystery. The vanishing research vessel. This was not a fishing crew relying on instinct and local knowledge. This was a fully equipped scientific expedition sent specifically to investigate the anomalies that had haunted these waters for generations. Modern instruments, trained personnel. A clear objective: to finally bring back data instead of legend. The vessel departed under ordinary conditions, tracked and logged like any other research voyage of its time. For a period, appeared, contact was routine. Then, without warning, it stopped. No distress call was received. No emergency signal was ever picked up by nearby stations. The ship simply went silent in the exact region it had been sent to study. Search efforts followed, but they found what the earlier disappearances had also left behind, which was almost nothing. No confirmed wreckage tied definitively to the vessel, no survivors, no black box account of what happened in its final hours. A ship built with modern technology, sent into these waters with full awareness of their reputation, met the same fate as the boats that came centuries before it. What made this loss different was not the outcome. It was the fact that it happened to an expedition designed specifically to prevent it. And in the data fragments that did survive, in the equipment logs recovered from related surveys, something else began to surface, something that had nothing to do with weather or currents at all. Number 7. Unmapped underwater structures. Long after the search for the missing vessel had ended, researchers returned to these waters with a different objective, not to look for what was lost, but to look at what was beneath. Sonar equipment, dragged slowly across the sea floor, began returning images that did not match anything on existing maritime charts. Massive formations rose from the ocean floor in patterns too symmetrical to immediately dismiss as ordinary geology. Straight edges, consistent angles, structures large enough to register clearly on equipment designed to map terrain, not artifacts. For a region already tied to decades of unexplained loss, the discovery raised an uncomfortable new question: whether the anomalies here had ever been about the surface at all. Marine geologists were cautious, as they should be. Underwater rock formations can, under the right conditions, form patterns that appear artificial without actually being so. But caution did not fully settle the debate. The scale of what sonar was picking up, and its precise repeating geometry, kept the conversation open in a way most seafloor surveys never do. No formal excavation has ever definitively closed the question. What sits beneath the Devil's Sea remains, officially unexplained, and the deeper researchers looked, the less convinced some of them became that these formations were simply geology at all. Number 6. The structures get stranger follow. Up surveys were meant to settle the debate once and for all, to confirm whether these formations were natural or something else entirely instead. Higher resolution scans made the question more complicated, not less. Sections of the structures showed patterns that repeated with a precision natural erosion rarely produces: terraced edges, uniform spacing, angles that appeared deliberate rather than accidental. Some researchers pointed to known geological processes capable of producing similar shapes under specific pressure and mineral conditions. It was a reasonable explanation, and for a portion of the formations, it held up, but not for all of it. Certain sections did not fit cleanly into any documented natural process, and no consensus has ever fully resolved what separates the explainable parts from the ones that remain in dispute. Compounding the uncertainty is a simple, uncomfortable fact. A complete survey of this region has ever been finished. Depth, visibility, and the area's own reputation have limited how much data researchers have been willing or able to collect. What exists is a partial picture of something far larger, sitting largely undocumented on the ocean floor. Up to this point, every mystery here has come from what is missing: vanished ships, vanished crews, vanished explanations. What comes next is different. It is about what instruments have actually recorded, in real time, while still active in these waters. Number 5. Magnetic anomalies. Ships passing through this region have reported something that no wreckage or witness account could easily explain. Instruments behaving as though the laws they were built to obey no longer applied consistently. Compasses drifting without cause. Navigation systems briefly losing accurate readings, then correcting themselves as if nothing had happened at all. These were not isolated reports from unreliable sources. Some came from trained crews, operating standard equipment in conditions that offered no obvious explanation for the interference. For a region already responsible for decades of vanished vessels, sudden and unpredictable navigational failure took on a far darker implication. Researchers have proposed natural causes, localized magnetic variations tied to the seafloor, interactions between deep currents and mineral deposits below. Some of these theories hold up under testing. But the interference recorded here has never followed a consistent, predictable pattern the way established magnetic anomalies elsewhere in the world do. It appears, disrupts, and vanishes, without a reliable trigger anyone has been able to isolate. If you were navigating these waters and watched your own compass drift for no reason, correct itself, then drift again, this is the moment official explanation would start to feel incomplete. And instruments were not the only thing behaving strangely out here. disappear at night, something else has been seen rising from beneath the surface. Number 4. Ghost lights from the deep at night. Sailors moving through these waters have reported something that defies simple explanation. Pale, blue-toned lights rising slowly from beneath the surface before fading back into darkness. Not lightning, not the running lights of a distant vessel, something originating from below the waterline itself. These accounts are not confined to folklore passed down through generations. Trained crew members on modern vessels equipped with reliable instruments have described the same phenomenon independently in the same general region, already tied to decades of unexplained loss and interference. Science does offer partial answers. Bioluminescent organisms are capable of producing light at depth, and certain geological processes can occasionally release gases that ignite or glow briefly near the surface. Both explanations account for some sightings. Neither fully accounts for the consistency, direction, or sustained duration described in the most detailed reports, details that don't match typical bioluminescent behavior or brief gas flares. What remains is a pattern documented by credible witnesses, only partially explained by known science, in the same waters where instruments fail and ships disappear without trace. And beneath those lights lies something researchers have only begun to map, a stretch of ocean floor larger and less understood than most people realize. Number 3. The deep sea unknown. For all the technology developed to study the ocean floor, only a fraction of this particular region has ever been fully mapped. Depth, unpredictable conditions, and the area's own history have kept large sections effectively unexplored, even by modern standards. What exists on most charts here is not a complete picture. It is a patchwork filled with gaps no one has been able to close. Deep sea sonar sweeps conducted in recent years have occasionally returned readings that don't correspond to any known formation, vessel wreckage, or marine life signature on record. Some of these readings have been dismissed as equipment error. Others have never been fully accounted for, logged, and then left unresolved, as expeditions moved on to other priorities. This is not unusual for deep ocean research in general. Much of the seafloor worldwide remains unmapped. But in a region already responsible for missing ships, unexplained structures, and unpredictable magnetic interference, unexplained sonar returns take on a different weight entirely. Somewhere in that unmapped darkness is a signal that stood out from the rest, a reading researchers have never been able to definitively place. And it is that signal, more than anything else recorded here, that has kept scientists returning to these waters despite decades of unanswered questions. Number 2. The signal nobody can place among the countless sonar sweeps and survey logs collected over decades in this region. One recording stands apart from the rest. It doesn't match the profile of a known vessel, wreck, or geological formation. It doesn't align with any documented marine life large enough to register at depth. Researchers who reviewed it were left with a reading that fits no existing category in their data. What makes it different from the other unexplained returns is not just its shape or depth, but its persistence. Where most anomalous readings appear once and are never detected again, this particular signal has been recorded more than once, in the same general area, separated by years. That kind of consistency is difficult to dismiss as equipment malfunction or a one-time error. No formal expedition has been mounted specifically to investigate it further, and no research team has offered a conclusive identification. It remains logged, referenced occasionally in academic circles, and otherwise unresolved, a data point that raises more questions than the survey that recorded it ever intended to answer. It is this signal, more than the missing ships, more than the unstable instruments, that sits at the center of what researchers now consider the most disturbing unanswered question in these waters. Number 1. The most disturbing discovery when researchers began laying every piece of evidence from this region side by side. Ship losses, magnetic interference, unmapped structures, the unidentified signal. A pattern started to emerge that no single explanation could account for on its own. These were not isolated anomalies scattered randomly across a stretch of ocean. They clustered repeatedly in the same coordinates across different decades and different investigative teams that had no knowledge of each other's findings. That convergence is what unsettles researchers more than any individual discovery. A single unexplained shipwreck can be attributed to human error. A single sonar anomaly can be dismissed as equipment malfunction. But when disappearances, structural formations, magnetic disruption, and an unidentified signal all overlap in the same limited stretch of water, coincidence becomes a harder explanation to accept. No official theory has ever unified these findings into a single confirmed cause. Some researchers point toward undiscovered geological activity capable of producing multiple effects at once. Others believe the connection points to something in these waters that has not yet been identified at all, natural or otherwise. Neither position has been proven, neither has been ruled out. What remains is a region of ocean that continues to draw scientific expeditions back, decades after the first disappearances were recorded, not because the mystery has been solved, but because every new piece of evidence only strengthens the pattern no one can fully explain. The Devil's Sea has outlived wooden ships, outlived radar, and outlived every generation of researchers who believed they would finally be the ones to explain it. Each expedition leaves with more data than the last, and somehow less certainty. Whatever moves beneath those waters, whatever bends the compass, and sends light rising toward the surface, it has not been found. It has only been noticed,